All right, settle in, grab a drink because we're about to have a heart-to-heart about your money. You know, the kind of chat you usually only have with your best friend or maybe a very understanding bartender, but definitely not with some stuffy finance bro in a suit. Because let's be real, most of that expert advice is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Anyway, many people ask me, yo, what is your secret to making bank? And I tell them the absolute stone-cold truth, but almost no one believes me. They're all looking for some magic pill, some overnight rocket ship to riches. And honestly, that is why most people stay broke. They're chasing unicorns while their money is slowly, painfully bleeding out in their bank account. So you've got some extra cash burning a hole in your pocket, and you're thinking, maybe I should invest this. But then you dip your toe in, and it is like trying to drink from a fire hose, right? Information overload, fancy terms. Everyone yelling different things. It is enough to make you want to just shove it all under your mattress and call it a day. Don't do that, by the way. Seriously, this video, this right here, is your no bullshit beginner friendly guide to investing in 2020. 6. Consider it your financial survival kit. We're going to break this beast down into 5 digestible, totally non-boring parts. First up, the real raw reason you should even bother investing. Because let's be honest, motivation is everything, right? Part 2. What in the actual heck should you invest in? Because spoiler alert, it is probably not that hot new meme stock your cousin's telling you about. Then part 3, when to start, and more importantly, how much to throw into the ring without losing your shirt. Part 4, and this is where it gets spicy. A live, no edits walkthrough of me actually buying a stock on camera. No smoke and mirrors here, just real-time action. And finally, part 5, we're diving into smart investing strategies and tackling those annoying questions like, what about taxes? Because, yeah, the government always wants its cut. So let's kick things off with part 1. Why should you be investing? Seriously, the main, unsexy, but fundamentally true reason is this. You want to put your hard-earned money to work so it can make more money for you. Think of it this way, every dollar you have right now, it is either a lazy slob sitting on the couch, or it is a tiny little employee ready to go out there and hustle for you. You choose. Let's say you've got an extra $1,000, just chilling. What are you going to do with it? You could blow it on 4 ridiculously overpriced iPhone cases, which is basically financial self-sabotage. You could tuck it under your mattress where it'll collect dust and contribute absolutely nothing to your future. Or you could stuff it in a regular bank account, which honestly is only slightly better than the mattress option. Here is the problem with all those choices: inflation. Yeah, that sneaky little thief that is silently eroding your purchasing power every single day. It is like a leaky faucet slowly draining your wealth over time. That $1,000 will buy less and less. Imagine an orange cost $8 last year, but now it is a cool $10. That $2 jump, that is inflation doing its thing, making your money weaker. So instead of letting your cash get weaker, letting it slowly die a quiet death in a savings account, the smarter, much sexier option is to invest that extra $1,000 into the stock market. Because investing, my friends, it doesn't just grow your money and your wealth, it actually protects it from that nasty inflation monster. It is like giving your money a tiny superhero cape. Now, how does this magic work? Well, there are 2 fundamental ways your money grows when you invest it. Let's break it down. First, when you invest in something like Apple, the company, you're not just buying a piece of paper, you're actually owning a tiny, tiny slice of Apple's business. So if Apple is absolutely crushing it, selling a gazillion more iPhones, making more money than Scrooge McDuck, then Apple, the business, becomes more valuable. And guess what? Your little slice of that business, it also becomes more valuable. So your money grows right along with it. Pretty sweet. The second, and arguably more mind-blowing way your money grows, is through something called compound growth. Don't let the fancy term scare you. It is actually incredibly simple and incredibly powerful. It is just a sophisticated way of saying you're earning money on your original investment, and then you're earning money on all the extra money your original money already made. Yeah, sounds like a tongue twister, but trust me, it is a game changer. Let's go back to our extra $1,000. That little employee we sent out to work. Imagine you invest it, and it magically grows by 10% every single year. Not bad, right? By the end of year 1, you've now got $1,100. That is your original $1,000 plus $100 in growth. Easy peasy. Now here is where compound growth grabs a microphone and starts singing its power ballad. In year 2, you're not just earning 10% on that initial $1,000 anymore. Oh no, you're earning 10% on the full $1,100. So that year, your money makes $110, bringing your grand total to $1,210. Feeling it yet in year 3, that 10% growth is now a beefy $121. pushing your portfolio up to $1,331. See what is happening, right? Each year. We're making money not just on our original $1,000, but on all the growth from the previous years too. It is like rolling a tiny snowball down a hill. As it rolls, it picks up more snow, gets bigger, faster, more powerful. It is an unstoppable force. That is why Albert Einstein, a pretty smart dude, called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And honestly, he wasn't wrong outright. So you've got a pretty good handle on why you should invest. You're fired up, you're ready to unleash your inner financial superhero. But here is the next million-dollar question. What should you actually invest in? As someone who, in a past life, actually walked those hallowed, somewhat stressful halls of Wall Street, I've seen it countless times. People just jump in thinking, oh, I'll just look at what stocks grew the most last year, and then I'll invest in those. It sounds like a genius strategy, right? Like you've cracked the code. But here's why that approach is about as effective as trying to catch smoke with a fishing net. It just doesn't work. Let's take a little trip down memory lane. Back to 2010, Nokia. Yeah, remember those indestructible brick phones? The ones you could probably drop from a 10-story building and they'd still work. Well, back then, Nokia wasn't just a nostalgic memory. It was the king of the phone world, owning nearly 38% of the market share. A titan, a colossus. But fast forward to 2020 and their market share plummeted to less than 1%. And their stock price, it crashed by almost 70%. Ouch. And if we rewind even further, say 40 years to the 1980s, the biggest companies on the planet looked vastly different from today. Back then, it was all about the big dogs of oil and gas. General Motors, DuPont, GE, the industrial giants. Then, just 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, a whole new cast of characters emerged. Exxon, Walmart, and Cisco were ruling the roost. And now today, it is Nvidia, Tesla, and Google. A completely different lineup. The point, my friends, is crystal clear. Just because a company was the darling of the market yesterday doesn't mean it'll continue to be a superstar tomorrow. The market is a fickle beast, constantly changing, evolving, devouring the old, and spitting out the new. So chasing past performance is like driving a car while only looking in the rearview mirror. You're bound to crash. So here is a golden nugget of advice I always share with beginners, and it is super important. You are far, far better off not investing in individual companies on day one. Seriously, don't even try. We've all heard that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Well, if you go all in on one single company, like say, Emaar Magic Lamp Company, you're essentially putting all your financial eggs into one very precarious basket. And if that basket tips over, well, goodbye. Breakfast, Alright, Vincent, enough with the analogies, get to the good stuff. So, what should we actually invest in? What is the secret sauce? For a beginner, the quickest, lowest effort. And frankly, smartest way to start investing is to look into these things called index funds. Yeah, I know, another fancy term, but stick with me. They're actually incredibly simple and incredibly powerful. Index funds are a fantastic option, especially if you want to start investing without needing to be incredibly lucky or having to spend every waking moment glued to the news trying to predict the next market move. Instead, with index funds, you pretty much just set it and forget it. It is the financial equivalent of a crock-pot meal, simple, delicious, and minimal effort. Even Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha himself, arguably the greatest investor of all time, has said that most investors, both the big institutional players like hedge funds and us regular folks, will find that the best way to own stocks is through an index fund. If it is good enough for Buffett, it is probably good enough for you. And me, but Vincent. What the heck is an index fund? I'm glad you asked because it is crucial. The easiest way to understand it is to break the term index fund into its two core components. Let's start with index. An index is simply a list of companies. You've probably heard of the S&P 500 before, right? That is an index. It is basically a curated list of the top 500 largest companies in the United States. Think of it as the A-list of American corporations. A fund is essentially a big pool of money that is collected from a bunch of different investors like you and me. And that pooled money is then used to buy something. In this case, it is used to buy pieces of those companies on the index list. So putting it all together, when I say invest in an index fund, that essentially means we're taking our money, tossing it into this big collective pool, and that pooled money is then used to invest in that whole list of companies. It is like joining a super exclusive investment club, but without the high fees and snobby attitudes. So one of my absolute favorite things about index funds is that it instantly and significantly reduces your risk of losing money, because instead of putting all your eggs into one shaky basket, you've got your eggs spread out across dozens, or even hundreds of different baskets. If you happen to drop one basket, guess what? You've still got a whole bunch of other eggs safely nestled in other baskets. It is diversification on steroids. And now I want to show you what an index fund actually looks like in the wild, so to speak. Alright, so this right here is QQQ, which stands for Invesco QQ Trust. And this particular index fund tracks something called the NASDAQ 100. And the NASDAQ 100 is essentially a list of the 100 largest tech companies. So all those tech giants you hear about, they're probably in there. If we dive a little deeper into QQ, we can actually see exactly what companies they're holding by going to their holdings page. Alright, so the top 10 holdings, which make up around 52% of the total assets in this index fund, include the big five: NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and then some others. So what this means is, for example, NVIDIA makes up about 10% of this entire index fund. In other words, when you invest in an index fund like QQ, you are essentially investing in all these different massive companies all at once. Pretty cool, right? Instant diversification. Now, one crucial is that they all come with fees. Yeah, nothing in life is truly free, and in the investing world, these fees are called an expense ratio. These little fees cover things like administrative costs, maintenance costs, basically whatever the fund needs to keep itself running smoothly. Think of it as the operating costs of your investment club. For example, if we invest in a fund with an expense ratio of 1% and we have $100,000 in that fund, that means we'll pay $1,000 per year in fees. Now, you won't actually get a bill at the end of the year. It is just automatically taken out of your investment, silently, efficiently, like a financial ninja. Generally speaking, a 1% expense ratio is considered pretty high, bordering on highway robbery. But here is the good news. There are fantastic index funds out there, and I'll share some with you later in this video that have super low expense ratios, like around 0.1 to 0.5%. So you don't have to stress too much about those extra fees, as long as you choose the right index fund. Alright. So now you generally know what you should be investing in. Index funds, easy peasy. But when should you actually start investing? Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, and I'm prepared for the hate mail, but I don't think everyone should be investing. Yeah, I said it. I truly believe it is entirely dependent on how you answer my next two very important questions. Number 1, do you have any high-interest debt with more than a 10% interest rate? If your answer is a resounding yes, then my friend, you absolutely unequivocally should prioritize paying off those debts first before you even think about investing your money. If you don't, it is like trying to fill your car with gas, while knowing you've got a massive hole in your gas tank that is just leaking gas everywhere. It is pointless. Look, let's say we have $10,000 cash, and we invest it in the stock market, which historically has an average return of around 10%. So in a year, we'd gain $1,000. Fantastic, right? But if we also owe $10,000 on our credit card, which has a brutal 25% interest rate, then we're going to be paying $2,500 in interest fees at the end of that year, meaning we'll actually end up losing $1,500 overall. See the math, it is not pretty. That is why I firmly believe if you have high interest debt, use that extra money to pay it down first.